I mean, for a New Yorker to say that we have a property tax problem, it's blowing my mind.
Well,
right
because
now.
he's also in finance, right?
Yeah.
And he teaches economics.
Yeah.
So for him, he was like this 2% property tax. And then, we went down a rabbit hole of where the property taxes go and how, that's a whole other story. But yeah, it was shocking to him.
When you get your property tax bill, that everyone just got, right? We just got them like a couple weeks ago.
Yes, last
When
week.
you get your property tax bill, the top of it has your PIN number, and then it has what your property tax is. It's 3 sheets. Take a look at Take a look at the middle.
That tells
The
you where
middle
your
is
money is
depressing.
going to.
And it tells you, and it also tells you on all the way on this side, it'll say percentage of shortfall.
Yes.
And there is nothing that's underneath 40% on that percentage of shortfall.
And so
It's
another podcast.
What's the 5 Ps? Do you remember it?
Proper preparation prevents poor performance.
There you go. It doesn't matter how much money we get. If we don't close, it's no money, right? So no close is no money. I'm everything that I am because of my dad's death. And I wouldn't be as successful without his death. Hey, welcome to Jason Theory. This is episode 2, season 3. And we are going to be talking to my partner, Sophia Klopas, and we are going to do a little bit of an overview of what happened last year, some stories from last year, where we see things going this year, the state of Chicago, what people are looking for, and just how competitive the market is. So if you are thinking about the real estate market, selling or buying, this will be a really interesting one for you to see what you may have missed last year, what you may have hit on. So if you bought, you hit. If you didn't buy, you missed. And what you can think about for next year. So let's get into it, Sophia.
Jason.
All right.
Hi. So last year, I think was generally for most people would say a pretty tough year for the real estate market. I think our rates increased higher than they ever had in history.
Yes.
So I think that sort of put a bit of a pause. And I think it's a repeat of what we talked about the wrap up last year. It was a tale of two markets, really.
Yes.
I think the residential market this year is going to be a lot more robust. I think it's also an election year, which can always make things real dicey.
Yeah, I think it's going to be, or last year was a great first 5 months, 6 months. And then the tail end of 6 months was pretty terrible because everyone thought that rates were going to go to ever. That was last year's dynamic. I agree with you. This year's dynamic will be a crazy first 6 months and then not an interest rate slowdown, but oh my God, the world's going to die slowdown, right? Because I was talking to somebody yesterday and they were like, another agent, John, friend of mine, he's like, well, why do you think the tail end's going to be like that? I'm like, man, don't you remember the commercials that start, when was the commercials start, like in August?
For the election?
That the world's going to end no matter, like if this
and
person
it's
gets
not a
in.
party. The market always slows down.
Yeah, no.
Regardless if it's a Republican or a Democrat coming in.
Yeah, the mudslinging stops everything. Yeah, mudslinging stops everything. So then, but we historically have had our best Decembers, like crazy Decembers and Januaries after those days too. So that's nice. So there'll be opportunity.
We don't get that post-summer bump in an election year, right? So all of those people are sort of, those buyers were not necessarily sellers, but more of the buyers are kind of just sitting on the sideline waiting. And I guess it is the sellers because the sellers then usually turn into buyers. So I agree. I think that it's going to be a not typical year this year. What is typical though is generally 60% of the inventory of the year is always sold before the end of May, right? So I think that it's still gonna continue to be the same story this year,
absolutely.
If not even a little bit more, just because people do know now that, the rates are coming down. And I think a lot of the sellers who were holding off because they didn't want to sell their super low interest rate, so to speak, it's a lot easier to double your rate than triple your rate.
Yeah, I think it's easier to go from 4 to 6 where we're at right now versus 4 to 8. I agree with you. So you have...
Yeah. Or 2.
Yeah,
right.
well,
There were
those people are
people in the 2s and 3s. I mean, I have a 2 on the front of my mortgage.
Those people, they're going to rent their place. That's how
Yeah.
homes are never going to be on the market. But I do agree with you. I think that people need to realize that, and we're seeing it now. I think people need to realize that not only did you have the slowdown last year because of the rates, it's just like you said, no one wanted to sell, no one wanted to buy, and all of a sudden through December was nuts. And then all of a sudden December to January to February, it's like, okay, we're okay at 6%. I've seen some 30-year jumbos come in under 6% on sales that I've done. So you're getting those rates, and you're just going to have, which is called switching costs. Those switching costs are now, you can stomach them, like you said.
Well, yeah, and it's also people, I think, it just takes time to get used to what is the new normal, which is still a historically low rate, right? A 6 is not a bad rate. I mean, I bought my house in the late 90s on a 6, and slowly pedaled back and refinanced. And then, to where I'm at now, I don't think we'll ever see those rates again.
No,
but I
hope we don't.
It took,
That's a problem.
but I do think it took buyers a while to just understand that this is the way it is, right? So I can either sit on the sideline and never buy waiting for that to happen and watching the homes appreciate, or I can get in now and, take the 5 or 6.
And I want to talk about how you're saying that, because you're saying I can get in now and take the rate. Let's just talk about the people that got in towards the beginning of last year. I just want to go over some of these numbers.
Here come your stats, people.
Yes. So this is year over year, December 22 versus December 23. Those are the most current, full. We do have Jan's that are starting to come in, but this is legit. It's stamped. It's good. So if you bought in January of 23, January 23, December of 22, you're up 13% on your median home sale price. I think Chicago alone was, I saw 7% from December to December. Overall, it's 5.4% in Illinois. I mean, there are opportunities, and those opportunities are going to come again. I mean, you've got not only that, but you've got, new listings down 25% last year, which we talked about, closed down 23%. So
those should go hand in hand, right? If the inventory's down, the sales are
down. And then the price is up 13, which means that demand is still continuing.
Pent up demand.
Yes, it's continuing to outstrip the sales. 1 out of 4 people I read still think that the market is going to crash. And that was the same as last year. People, if you are willing, if you're mentally wanting the market to crash so you can get in, it's not going to happen, because everything is governed by supply and demand. And people have heard me say that for 5 years now. And there's only 2.1 months of supply.
So a balanced market hovers at around 5 months.
Yeah.
Just for that, 5 to 6 months of supply is what is considered a normalized market.
Yeah. So if no one put a house in the market in 2 months, there'd be no homes for sale in the whole city of Chicago. That's bananas. So I kind of want to tail this into what you're saying, is that it's just time to get in. And there is you never know exactly what's going to happen. But I think another thing to get a little bit into the 10-year yield, and I'll just touch on this and I'll make it real easy for people to understand, is right now the 10-year is at about 4%. Let's just say give and take. That's the 10-year note. That's what banks borrow from, right? That's what they kind of call it. So the mortgage rates, though, are almost at 7%. That's a spread of almost 3%. So that's where the 10-year is to where the rates are. The normal spread, historical 40-year spread, is 1.7. So Sophia, that means if they don't touch rates, if they don't even lower rates, if they're like, we're good.
We're staying here.
We're good. Just on the premium where it should be historically, we drop below 6 into the 5s. That's without touching rates.
Right.
Because of the last couple of years, we overran where we should be. People, in any dynamic, there's going to be a pullback. And when there's a pullback, all of this supply and this pricing is going to explode again. So if you're waiting for rates to decrease, it's too late.
Right. And you can refinance.
That's the last of the math.
Yeah. Thank you. Glaze over. But you can refinance, and people forget that part of the equation. You can't get your purchase price, but you can refinance.
Yeah.
And it's
but this price appreciation last year happened without rates being dropped. This just This
there
is just
no
what
inventory.
no inventory. And where is that inventory going to come from? It's not coming.
Well, we hope though with the lowered rates that some of these people who were sitting on the sideline, like we said, were willing to, give up their 3-4% that they got during COVID and buy.
Yeah.
I do think we're going to see more inventory. It is also, to timestamp this, it is the Tuesday after Super Bowl, and traditionally Super Bowl Monday has always been the start officially of spring market in Chicago. So I think we're going to see, I think I noticed yesterday there was a massive influx of inventory that went on the market. And I think we're going to continue to see that over this week, just with the new listed properties coming on. So I do think that inventory will be a little bit better. It's my feeling.
Last year, what was the hardest thing when you were dealing with buyers for last year, even though with the limited amount of inventory that was on there? What did you find the hardest thing to find for your buyers? And did they just get exhausted and say, you know what?
Almost. So I had a great couple that were looking to purchase a multi-unit because they had listened to a lot of your podcasts and had done a lot of research. And it was a couple looking to buy a multi-unit, and they were thinking, okay, we'll get a 2 or 3 flat and we'll live in one, rent the others out, and, try to quote unquote live for close to free. Well, what happened, they kept getting, we were going in on $1 million property, going in at 1.1, 1.15. We were getting outbid consistently. And I kept saying,
was it cash or was it?
Well, they were not cash, but they were
people you were losing.
They were putting down 30%. Which is a lot. We were striking the mortgage contingency. For a first-time home buyer, this was very scary.
So striking the mortgage contingency, that is a great move in a very competitive market. So Sophia,
when you're not cash.
What does that
mean? So
what
that means is you're going to get a mortgage, but you are not going to be able to get out of the deal should you not be able to get the mortgage. The mortgage is a non-issue when you're competing on this property with other people. It's the closest way
to cash
to compete with cash. And that has to come with a very strong approval letter from the lender and working with, obviously, a lender that people respect and
know.
So
if it doesn't appraise out, you have to make up the difference.
You have to make up the difference.
Like you would with cash.
Like you would with cash, if you do an appraisal with cash. But they kept losing out, and it got to the point where it was so frustrating for them. And I just said, listen, let's refocus. And we just went into a condo.
Yeah.
Because they couldn't compete with cash. So the thing that was very frustrating about last year for a non-cash buyer was that people with cash were coming out of the woodworks because they knew they were going to win these offers.
Yeah.
So I think, and it would be interesting to look up the data, maybe we can get that later, the percentage of homes that were sold in cash, I think were significantly over
38%.
Yeah, I was going to say significantly.
I just saw it.
Yeah, I was going to say significantly over 30.
I did an IG on it. That's
and traditionally, you hover like in the high 20s, low 30s.
38%.
But last year, it was so high. And I think it's because the mortgage rates were higher than people had been accustomed to for the last 2 years. But they also knew that this was their opportunity to get these properties. And the interesting part was I would always, the properties we lost, these were relationships I had with brokers who were like, Sophia, I wish. But we were coming in like at 1.2 on a 1, and they were closing at like 1.4. So the spread was too great for somebody to take our offer. And my thought was always like, how is this going to appraise? Not one property did not appraise on those units. It was very crazy on those. I think they lost out on 4. And every single one I checked back with the brokers, and they're like, no, we didn't. We didn't have a problem. And I think what was happening is these brokers are starting to show, we had 7 offers. What did you say happened today? You found out there were 10 offers on these properties. So appraisers can't deny that the
appraisers say it. Like when there's when it's over, the appraiser will call me and go, if you have multiple offers, bring them, because then I can create
value.
value.
The brokers were bringing in.
There's not many trades.
Yeah, we have 6 or 7 offers. So this is market right now. And, that used to be something that I felt appraisers did not give as much credence to. But I think last year it was such a big deal because there weren't as many sales like within 6 months to go back and check.
Yeah.
So that was something interesting that happened a lot last year.
5 or 6 years ago, if you brought comps to an appraiser, like I got yelled at a couple times. Now I bring them and I'm like, I bring them now and I'm like, do you want these? Or like, absolutely, because there's no inventory. So if you can help me with my job, they actually like it.
They like it. Yeah.
They do call and ask for that stuff. Yeah, I think on the multi-units, you're talking about historical highs in the stock market, people sitting on millions of dollars of cash at highs where rates are at 8% and they can borrow from their stock account and get lending in the 2s to 3s to 4s. And so they're buying these places that are cap rating at 8% and they're only paying 4% on juice. They're making 4 on that. The multi-unit market is tough because people have so much money in the stock market right now and they're borrowing from it. That's tough.
That happened a lot. It even happened, not just in multi-units, but that was a specific set of circumstances where I had fabulous buyers.
Yeah.
And
I had one like that last year, but they were like, no, we want a house hack, and this is what they could spend. And I took them to 5 places that were in their price point. And I mean, they were like, these places could fall at any time.
They needed.
And they were like, yeah, no. Yeah, like, this is how you make money. Like, yeah, no, we'll go to a condo.
Yeah,
not for us.
Not for us. It is not for the weak.
That's like you said, like they list this stuff online. I can make money, this. And then when they sit in it and I'm like, okay, this is what you need to do. They're like, yeah, no, can you change that search?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so that was something that was real interesting about last year. And I think, I do think that it's going to continue this year.
I mean, I know for a fact that a bunch of developers have started to move to specifically meet that demand, right? Like one of our developers now building homes, but has 3 multi-unit projects going on right now that we're about to finish. And all he's doing is buying these rundown 3 flats in good areas, gutting them. We put renters in, we turn around and we sell it. And those things are selling like hotcakes. I see them all over. There's developers that build 3 flats that are like...
Well, our project, we were supposed to have a sales project at Montrose.
Yes.
And Kedzie was a new construction, new build, commercial on the first floor, elevator building, beautifully done, 8 flat. And when it was all said and done, they said, you know what? Sorry, we're going to rent this property.
Yeah, the rents are so high.
And the rents are so high. And that was what they decided to do. And they're going to hold it for a couple years, depreciate the property, and then sell it.
I mean, like we were talking about someone that I talked to you about this morning. I do think that it's really nice that agents are doing this, but we've lost out on our 4th property. It's 3 or 4. One sold before we even could put the offer in. And then another one they wanted to see that went on the market on Friday was calling for best and finals today at 12 p.m. They just marked it, let's see this. I wrote back to them, best and final by 12 today. Yeah. But the minimum amount, so this is $450,000 and less. The minimum amount of offers that we had on a property that we were battling was 10.
Yeah.
And I will tell you, they gave this is very interesting. They gave, and I told them this too, they gave an FHA approval. And they gave me their approval like a month ago on FHA. And I said, listen, you got to go conventional 5% down. I'm like, you've got to figure out how to do that.
Yeah.
Because on multiple offers, no one is going to want to deal with an FHA
approval.
Not the approval, the inspection.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The approval of the property.
Yeah. And I don't think and they didn't know. They're like, what? I'm like, yes, there is an inspection that FHA does that's separate than your home inspection. And I go, when there's 7 or 8 offers, why is someone going to
want to deal with that?
And you can't give credits. It has to be fixed before the loan is done. They have to come back and fix it. And she called me up yesterday during the...
She being the buyer?
No, I'm sorry. The agent called me up. The agent called me up during the negotiations, which she's overviewing all 10 offers. And she said, yours is FHA. We won't accept it because we have conventionals. We don't want the second inspection. And I said, we can go conventional. And I had them get a conventional. But you have to have all your best cards out, and that's that Jefferson Park area, which I talked about, I think, a little bit ago. Jefferson Park, Edison Park, that whole area by O'Hare, just still in the city.
Following the blue line.
Yeah, it's crazy right now.
Well, it's because everything
and it's
central has blown up. I mean, somebody listed a $2.2 million home in Bucktown yesterday on a 28 by 100.
Yeah.
Granted, it's beautiful, but it blows my mind. I mean, when we moved here, I mean, I paid like $500,000 for my house. And now, I mean, it's like, I was thinking about it like in comparison to, I never thought.
When I saw that, I sent it to Nikki and I go, man, what's this put our house at?
Yes, because it's just, you have to move further out now. I mean, and it's cyclical though. Like when we moved to Bucktown, our mother said to me, where are you going?
You're going west of the Kennedy. You're going west of the Kennedy.
We lived in Gold Coast. And she's like, where are you going? Oh my God, are you going to die there? Like it was crazy. And now it's like a great, flourishing, beautiful neighborhood with a lot of retail. And that was actually what was the draw, was we saw the retail coming and thought, okay, well, something's got to happen here. There's so much retail coming. But that's just like the natural progression. Like we look at Jefferson Park, like, and you know, who knows what's going to happen there in 20 years. These houses you're selling for $450 could hit $2 million.
It is nuts. What do you think when you're going out with a buyer? What do you think, like things that you look for? If there's three big things you look for to tell a buyer, hey, listen, this neighborhood's on the up and up, and this is why I think you may
retail.
Okay, so
always retail, and specifically, sounds crazy, but Whole Foods and Starbucks. Love them, hate them, whatever. They do so much market research before they put anything in a neighborhood. So if you see those sorts of stores, retail opening, you know that they've done their due diligence. Schools are a big thing. When you buy into a neighborhood that has a good school or has a strong parent involvement, PTA, you know that-that's going to, and I do think that's part of what happened in Bucktown with schools here.
For sure.
Is there was a lot of parent involvement in the neighborhood. So I think the schools, the neighborhood, the retail, the schools, and then lastly, transportation. I know people are not necessarily going downtown for work, but people want to be able to have transportation, whether it's not taking 25 minutes to get to the Kennedy.
That's the big,
you know, I mean, that's like the rub in some neighborhoods, or, you know, all the time, I mean, people are like, I don't want to be more, and because of our weather here, I don't want to be more than 10 minutes to an L stop.
Yeah.
So I think those are the top three things I look for and the things I ask my clients. Mostly school and transportation are two of the things I always ask people, like, how important are these things and what is your criteria for them? But those are the three things I look for when I'm looking into a neighborhood that's maybe not quite there.
And then on the sell end, what are you telling sellers right now in terms of like top things? Like when you go,
it has to be perfect. I
literally
am the most anal person. I don't even want to see a cup out. I want it to look almost like no one lives there. We're competing a lot with new construction, resale, right? There is a lot of new construction, not a lot of new construction, but there is new construction. There's also rehab work that's going on. So you have to be perfect. You get one chance. I have people will say, well, can we try it this way? No, because once you've been on the market, it's out there. The internet, your pictures live forever somewhere. Someone's going to find them.
Yeah. People are always like, can you take down those pictures? I'm like, they're yours from like 5 years ago.
I can't do anything with that. Yeah. So the one thing I say is it has to look perfect inside and outside. People forget about the first thing people see is the outside, not the inside when they're walking up. I mean, I said that to you about a property we're listing. I mean, the property is beautiful. The association does not have the outside so pretty. We've got to get the outside pretty because that's actually the first thing people see.
Right, they do, and it also represents how people live inside the building. Like those are your those are your
how
neighbors.
well are they taking care of the property?
Yeah.
I mean, if the outside looks, you walk in the door and there's leaves and garbage all over the place. Well, that doesn't show very well. So, you know, I'm showing up with a broom to clean up the front of the property before showing. I would say those two, the inside, the outside, and the other thing is just that the photos. The photos have to be perfect. I mean, I look sometimes at photos of properties and you'll see like uneven towels and, a strewn cup on the counter or things like that. So having your photos and making sure that you have a photographer who's looking at all of the details and you're looking over their shoulder.
Yeah, you gotta be over
for the photos. I'm there for the photos. People say, "Oh, you're coming?" I'm like, "Well, yeah, of course I'm coming." Too controlling to not be there for the photos.
On pricing, how hard is it to price stuff now when we don't have inventory? I mean, inventory is down 25%. Sales are down 24%. Pricing's up, so it's not a negative thing.
Right.
But like, how do you figure out, like, I have a listing agreement. So I have a listing appointment today, and the last 12 months, there's 4 sales. And it's like...
Of comparable properties.
Comparables.
Right.
4 in 12 months. And I don't like to go 12 months back, but I have to. Because if I go 6 months back, there's 1.
Right. Well, I think I don't always just look at the closed. I look at what's competing.
There's no actives.
Well, you'll find some somewhere. But I mean, you have to look at people always talk about just the closed.
I always look at actives because that's your competition.
That's your competition.
I hate closed.
I look also in on TAN.
Yeah, it's just...
and I see, and it's a lot to go through. There's a lot of stuff to do. I always try to push the price a little bit, and I think that working within the PLN helps a little bit, and getting a third opinion.
Yeah.
There's always the seller's price, the broker's price, and then the periphery, right?
Yeah, we can always, so the PLN's the private listing network for people that are listing, and you can always send something on the private listing network to everyone. It doesn't show up as pricing, but you can test a price and you can go real high or push the envelope. And if you get it, kudos to you, you got that price. And then that creates the new market.
You can also, like what we do is put the stuff in a draft in MLS, and we can reverse prospect, which means after 24 hours, it kicks back the amount of buyer matches at a certain price point. So you can
figure out
draft
demand. You can figure out
demand. At $1,950,000, $900,000. I understand that's a large spread. However, it will turn back after 24 hours where the largest buyer demand is for this type of product. And I think that's always a really good way to go about it. And, you go into a listing, you're going in to talk to a seller. If you're not listing for a month, talking about price at that point, pinning it down, it's so far out, you can't even really pin it at that point, especially this time of year, right? I mean, who knows what in a month, 50 things could go on the market between now and then. Maybe not as tight as what you're looking for, but I'm just saying there will be more information this time of year.
Do you think Chicago will continue to be starting to be a more, I know this, I don't know how I say this the right way, but do you think Chicago would continue to be what I consider turning into a more affluent city as it gets more and more expensive and people get pushed out of city central areas? Like, it seems like Chicago is like...
Chicago, when you mean the city, not Chicagoland.
Not Chicagoland. But it just seems like when you look at where we were 5, 6, 7, maybe 10 years ago versus New York and the coasts and Florida, it seems like we're starting to become expensive.
I think our prices have gone up, though, but I think we are still... I think we've gone up, but I think it's happened also... it's also gone up a lot in the coasts.
And we're just not there, so we don't know how... I know mine.
Well, no. So I have a friend I talked to last night who paid $2.1 million for her property in Florida 5 years ago. Her neighbor, same layout, but faces the alley versus faces the street. So she has the premier, tier.
Yeah, and she's in the other one's in the alley.
4.2.
Oh, Jesus.
Okay. So that's what I'm saying is that I think that the coasts have also gone up. But I think back to we've been selling real estate for 22, 23 years. Did I ever think that I would see $1 million 1-bedroom in Chicago? No. Right? But that's what you have to pay if you want to be in a luxury building. Okay, it's not a 900 square foot, but it's a 1,400 square foot 1-bedroom condo in a nice building. Yeah. It's going between $800,000 and $1 million.
It's just crazy.
On Michigan Avenue. But that same condo in Manhattan is 2 to 3 times.
Yeah.
So I do think our prices are going up, but I think it's, equally to.
We still have that spread.
We're still way less expensive. I mean, we showed a multi-unit on Fullerton Parkway to a New York buyer, and he could not believe the value of the property. And we were having this conversation, and he said, it's so affordable. It blows his mind. Not only the purchase price of the property, but the quality of the unit and the finishes and the lot size for the rents. Like, he can't believe that someone is getting it's a top floor, but a top floor studio for $1,900. Mind you, we just took the rent from 17 to 19 on one flip, on one lease.
Yeah.
But to him, he's like this.
But the cap rate is much greater than New York too. So if you
but the rent, he said that in Manhattan would be like $6,000.
Yeah, but the price of the building would be
right. But so that was it. The only thing he said that was like a flip was that our property taxes are higher.
So think if we didn't have the property tax issue, because the property tax is what is.
It is an issue.
Yeah, that's what keeps the pricing down.
Yeah, it is.
So So you think you're getting a good price, but then all of a sudden it's like, oh, on top of it, I'm paying $1 million in mortgage payments to taxes. Because that's what you're doing.
Right. Yes. The tax. Right.
It's another
what
million.
Jason's saying is the equivalent. The property tax would allow you to purchase another $1 million.
So if you could spend $1.5 million, if we had normal property taxes, you actually could spend 2.5, 2.2.
Yeah.
So when you're going down to Florida and taxes are nothing,
right?
You're like, okay, that's why. I can spend. What? This is what I can spend.
Much more buying power.
Buying power.
Right. So yeah, that was So I do think our prices have escalated, but I also think they've escalated everywhere else.
I mean, for a New Yorker to say that we have a property tax problem, it's blowing my mind.
Well, because he's also in finance, right?
Yeah.
And he teaches economics.
Yeah.
So for him, he was like this 2% property tax. And then, we went down a rabbit hole of where the property taxes go and how, that's a whole other story. But yeah, it was shocking to him.
When you get your property tax bill, everyone just got, right? We just got them like a couple
yes, last week.
When you get your property tax bill, the top of it has your PIN number, and then it has what your property tax is. It's 3 sheets. Take a look at Take a look at the middle.
That tells
the
you
middle
where
is
your
the
money
pressing.
is going to,
and it tells you, and it also tells you on all the way on this side, it'll say percentage of shortfall.
Yes.
And there is nothing that's underneath 40% on that percentage of shortfall.
And so it's another podcast. At any rate, so yeah, the tax thing I think is the biggest issue that we face that might be different than Florida or New York. I think the taxes in California, I think they're close to ours.
They're closer, but they're set.
Still high.
But they're set.
Right. So in California, your property tax is what it is at the time of purchase. It doesn't readjust annually. People who move here from California think it's bananas.
They tried to do that, and
here.
they tried to do like triennial assessment in California, and it was like, what?
Anarchy.
Yeah, well, there's people that own homes for 50 years that they're paying taxes.
Same thing here.
Yeah, no, but they don't get reassessed.
I know.
So it's like,
I mean, but that's what happens to elderly.
Yeah.
People who, when you see people who are fighting the gentrification, the reason is they're, unfortunately, being pushed out of their homes not because they can't afford the home, they can't afford the property tax anymore.
Yeah, but and I agree with them, why should they be penalized for the fact that they've been there for 50 years? They established that neighborhood. They made that neighborhood.
They did. And that's the rub, is that like you want gentrification, or there has to be a
but they're also making 300%.
Yeah, but they also stuck it out.
Yeah. No, I agree with you.
If
you made it through the 70s here,
yeah,
the 80s.
Bucktown is a very different neighborhood today than it was when we moved to Bucktown. I was the nicest house on the block, and now I'm the least nice house on the block. And this is
kind of right. So look at percentage of home appreciation in 30 years, 300%. If you did your numbers, that's probably dead on.
Yeah, I am.
10 years, 103%, 5 years, 54%, and 1 year, 7%. Because last year we appreciated 7%. Yeah. That is crazy.
Well,
300%.
I'm living that.
Yes. No, that's what I'm saying. Mm-hmm. That's bananas. And then the 5 years at 50%. That's nice.
So you got to stay, and that's when first-time home buyers, right, they always say, well, I'm just going to stay here for 2 years and leave. And I said, well, then don't expect to make much money because you're going to have commission fees and you're going to have, transfer taxes and all of that.
7%.
Yeah. I said, you got to stay. You got to commit to stay or have a different mindset on that.
Yeah.
And and the other thing people, I think, always forget is when they're thinking about, oh, well, I just broke even. Well, no, you didn't, because then you ended up living free for how many years?
Yeah, no one takes that
the cost of living into consideration when they sell. And that always frustrates me. And I'm like, no, that's money.
Yeah, that's utility. I mean, you would have been renting somewhere else. Yeah. No one takes that. They don't take that, and they don't take the tax savings, the deductions that they get.
Well, I think it's really hard because all we hear is how bad our taxes are,
Yeah, but it's still a deduction.
Yeah,
not the property, but the federal. All right, any last words about 2024? People, I mean, is there going to be buying opportunities? Do you jump in right now, or do you wait for the election and possibly you slow down then, but maybe not get the inventory you need?
Well, I think that I always say that the best time to buy is, I'm a real estate agent, but the best time to buy to get the best deal is in the winter months here.
Yeah.
Right. So, you have to run the risk and you have to decide what's important to you. Do you need to get into a house immediately? Or are you willing to wait a little bit and maybe not get everything you want, get most of what you want, and then turn what you're buying into what you wanted? Right? Doing those upgrades. I have a client who bought a property on Wood Street in a loft building that needed a total rehab, and we got a screaming deal last fall. I think we paid like $720 for a loft. The neighbor loft, literally right next door, listed yesterday for $1.3. Oh, she's gotta be happy. I sent him the listing, and he's like, "Okay, Sophia, it's time for you to come over and help me get on my rehab." Right? So that property, because it needed work, did not sell in the high spring market. It was happenstance that he came and we were looking in the fall months. And we got like $100 and something thousand off because the seller was like, okay, if I don't sell it now, I'm going to have to wait till the following spring. So I do think sometimes there is opportunity if you can wait. And if you're willing to do, I have a client, Adriana, sweat equity. If you're willing to put a little bit of sweat equity into it, my client is floored that he could almost make 40% on his money.
Man, ugly houses are the best.
Yeah. So yeah, right. There's a sign at the exit on Armitage. We buy ugly houses.
Ugly houses.
I'm plugging them, but yeah,
just to make money.
So, I do think if you got to get in the market, you got to get in the market, and the most inventory is going to be now. But if you have some imagination, a little bit of money for some rehab and some waiting time, I do think that fall and winter are great months to buy for a deal.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
That is our 2023 and kind of what we see for 24. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast, download it. We're on Spotify, Apple, basically every platform. Yeah. And thank you so much. And we will see you in a couple weeks. Thank you.